Our first presenter is Dr. Scott Esplin. He's an associate professor of church history and doctrine at Brigham Young University, where he also serves as associate department chair. He received a doctorate in education and leadership and foundations from Brigham Young University, specializing in 19th century American educational history. He is the author of numerous articles, book chapters, and books examining Latter-day Saint educational history and historic sites. His work on Utah's educational history was recently recognized with the 2013 Editor's Choice Award from the Utah Division of State History. Dr. Esplin.
Thank you, Ron. I'm glad to be with you this morning so that I know who I'm speaking to and what connections they may have. Do we have anyone here who has connections to the Mormon colonies in Mexico? Has either lived there or has family connections there? Great. Thank you. That'll be helpful to know, and we may rely on you for corrections to my presentation. As the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints has expanded globally, its educational system has followed step for step. At present, the church educational system operates in 139 countries, generally in the form of its well-recognized seminary and institute programs. Additionally, it maintains a handful of elementary and secondary schools, serving nearly 8,000 students in several long-established locations, including Fiji, Kiribati, Samoa, Tonga, and for the focus of this paper today, Mexico. In that country, one of the faith's earliest uses of education in a global context occurred at the Juarez Academy, the church's oldest operating international school. Originally serving an isolationist purpose for saints seeking refuge beyond the borders of the United States, the school was established in 1897 to educate English-speaking children sequestered in northern Mexico. The account of one of these students, Anna Lowry Ivins, a member of the school's inaugural graduating class, reflects the tensions evident in Mormonism's earliest global educational forays. Ivins' account captures the successes and challenges in expanding the church abroad. This paper will examine her experience while contextualizing it with other accounts of the school's early history in order to explore what the story of the Juarez Academy reveals regarding global church expansion and international church education. Admittedly, Ivins' account is only one of many that could be examined regarding the Juarez Academy. Mormon educational presence in Mexico is rooted in the early history of the faith. A general attack is being made upon our liberties throughout all the territories where our people reside, President John Taylor wrote community leaders in Arizona in December 1884. Characterizing the church's isolationist perspective common to that era, President Taylor proposed, "Our counsel has been and is to obtain a place of refuge under a foreign government, to which our people can flee when menaced in this land." Within weeks of his announcement, more than 300 Latter-day Saints from Arizona and southern Utah poured across the Mexican border, eventually settling 10 communities in the northwestern states of Chihuahua and Sonora, Mexico. Chief among them was the community of Colonia Juarez, which became the headquarters for a stake in the region in 1895. To the north, church leaders in Salt Lake City responded to the loss of societal control brought by the increasing federal opposition to church practices. Attempting to protect itself from encroaching national influence, an educational policy of isolationism emerged. In 1888, Church President Wilford Woodruff called for educational expansion, declaring, "The time has arrived when the proper education of our children should be taken in hand by us as a people." He further directed that each stake create its own private academy. Within months, dozens of church academies sprang up across Utah, Idaho, and Arizona. Mexico followed suit when the town of Colonia Juarez opened the Juarez Academy in September 1897. Patterned after its sister academies in the United States, the Juarez Academy offered traditional academic subjects bolstered by the study of religion. Enrolling 225 common school students its first year, the school graduated 15 students from the 8th grade in 1898. These students became the first 9th grade class later that fall. Among the students in that first class was Anna Lowry Ivins. Anna's life began in St. George, Utah, where she was born to Anthony Woodward Ivins and Elizabeth Ashby Snow on October 20th, 1882. The third of a family that eventually included 9 children, Anna recalled her childhood days in St. George as very happy ones and a source of many pleasant memories. Attending school with her older brother Antone, her reminiscent account details her studies and recess games of little rounders, one old cat, and marbles. Hikes to the top of St. George's Sugarloaf Mountain, kissing games, and pairing off as couples for an accompanied walk home following parties punctuate her account, all of which changes with her father's call from the First Presidency on August 18th, 1895, to relocate to Mexico, preside over the Mexican mission, a place where he had previously served as president from 1882 to 1884, organize the Juarez stake, and serve as its first stake president. 13-year-old Anna notes the sacrifice on the part of her father, quote, a very promising candidate for the governorship of the state, in her words, and for her mother, who was in poor health and, quote, looked forward with dread to life in a new, strange country, end quote. For herself, she called the move to Mexico the greatest tragedy of my life thus far. After a year of preparation, the Ivins family, together with their 7 children, ranging from 16-year-old Antone to nearly 3-year-old Gusta, traveled by train to Salt Lake City and then to El Paso, Texas. Crossing into Mexico in October 1896, Anna recalled her mother's nervousness during the family's first night encamped near Ahumada, Mexico, when Anthony Ivins reassured her that government soldiers were stationed nearby. Anna's mother reflected the tensions evident in this unfamiliar global foray, replying that she, quote, would feel just as frightened of them as of the local population. Anna captured the scene. And here is Anna pictured on your right. As we traveled through the sparsely settled country, it was quite evident that we were indeed in a totally different country. Many interesting sights met our eyes. Mexican men in their tall sombreros and brightly colored serapes, driving their heavily loaded burros before them along the dusty roads. The flat-topped brown adobe huts with just as brown men, women, and children hovering about around the doorways, surrounded by their chickens, dogs, and goats. The men working in the fields with their primitive methods and crude machinery, consisting of wooden plows and hoes, were all indicative of the new country in which we were to live. Settling in the community of Colonia Juarez, Anna quickly made friends and resumed her studies. Educational facilities being so limited, my father at once set out to improve them, Anna Ivins recalled. An addition was begun in a schoolhouse which consisted of an entrance hall and 2 large classrooms on the ground floor, 2 large classrooms, a principal office, and a smaller room in the upper floor, making in all a very comfortable and commodious building. With the facility in place, President Ivins next turned his attention to securing a competent teacher for the isolated Mormon community, engaging Guy C. Wilson, an instructor at the Brigham Young Academy here in Provo, Utah, for the task. Curriculum at the international school mirrored that of the academy system in the United States. Ivins reported that their studies consisted of algebra, geometry, bookkeeping, psychology, theory of teaching, English education, English literature, ancient and modern history, etc. Additionally, recognizing that the younger grades needed attention if future students were to be prepared to attend the academy, the school arranged for a professional teacher from Utah to assist Principal Wilson in conducting teacher training classes in order to develop future faculty. Reflecting on Wilson's ability to teach such a broad range of subjects, Ivins recalled, it indeed required a well-informed, versatile teacher to fulfill such an assignment. With its traditional academic curriculum and corresponding teacher training division, the early Juarez Academy looked like any other Wasatch Front Church Academy, with one minor exception, its location outside the United States. Examining the school, little would indicate it was not located somewhere in rural Arizona, Utah, or Idaho. During its earliest years, names of the faculty and students reflect the school's Anglo population and contain some of the faith's most prominent local names. For example, though small, the 6 members of the school's first graduating class had, in addition to Anna Ivins and her older brother Antone, the surnames Bailey, Clayson, Harris, and Hatch. Similar Northern European surnames like Bentley, Cox, Jones, Red, Robinson, Romney, Snow, and Taylor dominated the subsequent 5 graduating classes. Teacher roles also reflect the American presence, with names like Cannon, Clark, Eyring, Hatch, Larson, Romney, Smith, Snow, Wilson, and Young, prominent during the school's first 15 years. Additionally, all instruction was done in English, with the exception of a Spanish course, the lone curricular deviation from the other academy offerings, and for Anna Ivins, a subject where she later noted never developing proficiency. It was this Spanish course where the early operations of the Juarez Academy seem to have come closest in connecting with their Mexican surroundings. An adult Hispanic student, Manrique Gonzalez, appears to be the only native Spanish speaker to have graduated from the Juarez Academy during the school's first 25 years of operation. Originally from the state of Coahuila in northeastern Mexico, Gonzalez moved to Colonia Juarez for work, joined the church, and graduated from the academy in 1910 at the age of 28. As a student and later full-time after his graduation, Gonzalez taught Spanish at the school, becoming the only Hispanic member of an otherwise Anglo faculty during the first decades of its operation. Though the Hispanic student and faculty populations at the school were limited in the early years, community interactions between the American expatriates and local Mexican residents were not limited. Ivan's account notes that her family's employing Ruperta Hernandez, a young Mexican girl, to assist her mother in their home, while a neighbor named Andres assisted with farm work. Her brother, Anton, upon graduating, spent several years studying Mexican law in Mexico City, and according to Anna, quote, spoke the language like a native and learned to understand the Mexican people. The wording of Ivan's account, that her brother understood the Mexican people, subtly highlights the way early settlers of the Mormon colonies viewed themselves as something other than Mexican. This navigating of cultures was highlighted in her reminiscence of community gatherings that blended elements of traditional Mormon and American culture with those of Mexico. Ivans recalled, holidays were of special interest, and we had a number of them. We celebrated the 24th of July with perhaps a parade and a public meeting at which we listened to speeches about our Mormon Utah pioneers. Then there were the Mexican Independence Days, the Cinco de Mayo, the Dia Seis, a gathering in the town park, the singing of the national anthem, orations about the history of the nation, often a parade, the braiding of the maypole on the Cinco de Mayo, games and contests for all, and always a dance in the evening, all helped to make these days memorable ones for us, Ivans continued. We thrilled to the exploits of Benito Juarez, the poor priest who led his people in their struggle for freedom and later became the president of the republic, she ended. Explaining the balance these settlers sought in being both Americans by birth, yet exile residents in Mexico, Ivans continued, we were doing our best to be good citizens of our adopted country, not actual citizens in a legal sense, for few of the Mormon colonists ever became naturalized, but we did endeavor to be loyal to the country and its laws. For his part, Principal Wilson, who married Anna Ivans in 1903 and loved his work in Mexico and the school he helped found. There is nothing to be gained by going out of Mexico for anything that is taught in the Juarez Stake Academy, he wrote. Wilson counseled his student body in 1911. On the contrary, there is every reason why we should all support our home institution and make it the pride of our people and a credit to Mexico. Resolve, come, work. Resolve, work, come. Ironically, Wilson's invitation for students to stay in Mexico in 1911 was reversed a year later, when in July 1912, the Mexican Revolution made it necessary to abolish school. Leading up to the conflict, Ivans notes in her account, the colony people endeavored to remain entirely neutral as we desired to incite no animosity towards us. However, the revolution continued going from bad to worse, Ivans reported, as far as our people were concerned, as much tension and ill feeling between the local Mexicans and the Americanos, as they called our colonists, developed, and it was determined to evacuate to El Paso. Though some returned, Ivans' intimation that she would never see her Mexican home again proved true, as the Wilson family relocated to Salt Lake City, where Guy Wilson became the church's second seminary teacher, and later the first full-time religion faculty member here at Brigham Young University. While the Wilson family experience in Mexico ended with the evacuation of the community in 1912, the Juarez Academy itself lived on. Some residents returned to Colonia Juarez a year later, solidifying effects of the Mexican Revolution into the church's global approach to education in the early 20th century by entrenching ideas of isolationism and protectionism. The community of Colonia Juarez and the Juarez Academy itself served as a refuge for Mormon settlers in Mexico during the turbulent years that followed. For this reason, in part, when the church divested itself of the other church academies in the 1920s, the Juarez Academy survived. Eventually, the ideas of isolationism and protectionism, with the underlying thread connecting the community to America, permeated church education in the Colonia Juarez. One elementary school history chronicled a clash between the cultures. One day, after a session of patriotism for the colors of the flag, the history records, a pupil, Ali Acord, paraded an American flag around the schoolyard. A little Mexican student snatched the flag to the ground and stamped it out as he shouted, "This must not be carried in Mexico." The teacher thereafter included the Mexican flag in the lesson on patriotism. Perpetuating the division, Juarez schools taught the courses required by the Mexican Department of Education, Clark Johnson summarized in his analysis of church schools in Mexico, but they did not comply with the requirement that these courses be taught in Spanish initially. They also continue to celebrate Independence Day on July 4th each year rather than on September 12th, Mexican Independence Day. The Juarez schools simply did not embrace the Mexican culture, Johnson concluded. One teacher summarized the goal of this instruction. We are going to make the natives good Americans and not good Mexicans for Mexico. A telling example comes from a 1942 study conducted by Herman L. Kane, director of the American School in Mexico City. Authorized by the American Embassy to analyze schools in Colonia Juarez, Kane concluded, although these schools have been in existence since 1985, a visitor can easily imagine himself in Kansas or Utah, and while Spanish is taught in all grades, it creates nothing of an atmosphere. Some of the teachers were born in Mexico and they speak the Spanish language perfectly. Nevertheless, they fail to give the child much more of Mexico than his cousin receives from his Spanish class in Salt Lake City. A Mexican public school inspector more bluntly summarized that the residents were still Americans in their hearts. As the school and the community underwent these critiques in the 1950s, its very existence as a Mormon outpost was threatened. When only 9 students graduated from the academy in 1954, one author questioned, have the academy and the colonies which it guided served their purpose? Will the academy, which has had such a rich and thrilling historical background and which has fought adversity so many times to survive, finally wink out? To make both the school and the community survive, a change needed to occur within Mormonism's international education approach. Rather than seeking to preserve and transmit American ideals, the school needed to embrace the Mexican culture. In Salt Lake City, Church Apostle Marion G. Romney, himself a product of the community of Colonia Juarez, acknowledged the need for a change. We have a great work to do in these lands, developing our programs around the native cultures, Romney counseled. Stories and illustrations from Mexico should be taken from the Mexican history and from the lives of Mexican heroes such as Benito Juarez and Hidalgo. Our activities should feature Indian and Mexican dances, folklore, and music. Ideally, Romney hoped that church membership could look to Mexico City rather than the Juarez Stake Academy or the United States for their educational model. Complying with his desires, programs at the Juarez Academy were revised to strictly adhere to Mexican regulations. Additionally, the Juarez Academy, as well as local church-run elementary schools that fed it, began participating in local celebrations, parades, and activities. At the same time, the school sought to better integrate Hispanic students into its programs, stabilizing the dwindling enrollment. Children of local residents, including those from some of the most influential families in the state of Chihuahua, were recruited to attend the school. While English continued to be the primary language of instruction, special programs were instituted to help students continue learning in their own tongue while acquiring proficiency in English. During the 1960s, a noticeable increase in Hispanic named graduates emerged. In the 1967-68 school year, Hispanic students outnumbered Anglo students for the first time, a trend that has continued to increase. By the end of the 20th century, roughly 85% of the school population is Latino. All of this coincided with dramatic church growth across Mexico. Membership exploded more than 25-fold from 5,646 members in 1950 to 141,000 members by 1975. By 2012, the church reported membership of more than 1.2 million in Mexico, the highest total for the church in any country outside the United States. Educationally, with its 54,000 students in 2012, Mexico also boasts the highest enrollment of seminary and institute students of any country outside the United States. Most importantly, this growth has occurred among the nation's native peoples. In the church's April 1988 General Conference, Elder Richard G. Scott taught, increasingly, the world is being divided into groups of individuals who seek earnestly to preserve their ethnic, cultural, or national heritages. These efforts are generally motivated by sincere appreciation for what forebears have done, often under the most extenuating circumstances. Appreciation for ethnic, cultural, or national heritage can be very wholesome and beneficial, but it can also perpetuate patterns of life that should be set aside by a devoted Latter-day Saint. In the earliest years of the Juarez Academy, the school worked to preserve an American national heritage in this Mormon-Mexican outpost. While motivated, as Elder Scott describes, by a sincere appreciation for what forebears had done, this adherence to American educational practice created a barrier for assimilation into Mexican society. Anna Ivins, the daughter of the community leader, student in the school's first graduating class, and eventual spouse of the school's principal, captured the worldview that permeated her day when she wrote, "We were doing our best to be good citizens of our adopted country." Eventually, this preservation of an American type of Mormonism, however well-intentioned, had to be set aside. Educationally in Mexico, the church moved from a mode of isolation and preservation to acculturation and adaptation. This transition within the Juarez Academy and across the country, making, in the words of Elder Scott, the first allegiance membership in the church and his teachings the foundation of life, removed barriers to happiness, and opened the door for marvelous church growth. Thank you.